Hello everyone, this is Vivek here, your host for today's session. Following is the agenda of today's session. Report server properties, report client properties, config file properties and log management, iPackager and cap deployment, along with the Q&A session. So let's start first with the report server properties. So I logged into Intellicus as an super admin user. So for going to the report server properties, you have to click on navigation through the hamburger icon, click on administration, configure, and server. Under configure tab, you will find all kind of configuration related to the application. So first tab is the connection, which you have already discussed in detail. Second part is coming as the server, which is our report server properties. These properties are now categorized into different sections based on their nature. So we are going to discuss all these sections in detail in one by one in today's session. A very important part that this configure or this menu is available to the super admin user of the application. It is not visible to the end user or the designer user. So there is a possibility that most of you log into application won't see their page because of the permission issues. Let's start with the report server property. First tab, that is general properties, and the first property that is security. Okay. By default, whenever you log into the portal, you have to provide an authentication. Okay. But Intellicus provides a mechanism. In that case, if you want to make this portal as a general portal where without login, anybody can access it and view all the reports, then you can disable the security option. In this case, it will be accessible publicly without any authentication. That totally depends on the use of the application and your use case. Coming on to log level, every application does logging. Okay. Logging of what exactly the task it is performing in at a different level based on the requirement. Okay. So Intellicus provides 5 kinds of logging level based on which the report server logs are captured. Uh, Error, debug, info, warning, and fatal. So let's discuss in detail one by one because this is and where, when and where to use that, because this logging is very important. One, for debugging any issue. Second, it if proper logging method is not used, it might hamper your application performance as well. So let's start with the log level error, that is by default level of the log. This in this mode, only error logs will be captured in the application. So all the error related to the application will be captured in the logs. No other information is captured. This mode is helpful when you are having an application in production use. So in case of production, you would only need to capture the error which you witnessed while execution of any of your tasks. Second mode is debug. In debug mode, it provides the most detailed logging of the application. Let's say it will, in this mode, application will capture all kind of logging. What query executed, what a particular thread performed, what happens during this process, who logged in, who logged out, what was the duration. So all the details were provided in the during this. So this debug mode is useful when you are debugging the application or when you are developing or in your UAT or development instance. Third type of mode is info mode. Info mode is helpful when you just want the information of whatever executed with a minimal information. Fourth is warning. Warning is used when you want only the warning in the logs, whatever warning messages you have got. This is beneficial when you are using production type instance. Fifth is fatal. It will log only when the application failure kind of fatal errors are witnessed in the application. Rest all messages will be didn't logged and will be ignored. So based on your requirement, you can configure the log level. Most important is debug and error. In case of production usage, keep it as error to have minimum logging whenever any error is witnessed. And in case of development or UAT instance, you can keep it as debug. To view the logs of the application, you have to click on the hyperlink called log files. And here you will get all the log details which are there in the application. So based on the timestamp, you can click on log, select the logs and click on download. So it will be downloaded. In case you want to purge the log files, that you want to delete the old log files and generate a fresh, then you can purge. We provide a purge option as well to purge all the old logs and capture from the fresh. Now, the second tab in report server properties is folders and paths. So in this property, we can provide different paths related to the different types of folders available in the application. Let's discuss in detail in one by one. XML data source. XML data source folder is the path which you provide when you want to use XML as a data. This is by default available inside the report server folder where application is installed. If you want to change this path, you can also configure it manually as per your requirement. All the folders which are defined inside report engine where application is installed are defined in this manner. /XML data. If it didn't work for you, you can provide the full FQDN path and it will take the full path. Temporary folder. The temporary file during the processing of the application are kept in this folder. It is also present in the report server by default under temp directory. In case you want to change this, if you are having a huge processing and you want to change the disk or something, you can configure from this location. Log files or log folders. The log folder where the log files are generated for report server are kept under log files in report engine folder. So there is two ways to access log files which we discussed. One is directly from here. In case you have access to server, physically they are stored at this location. If you want to change the log files or the location of log files, you can change it from this option. By default, application has 10 log files of 10 MB size each. In case the log files get increased or generate more than that amount, then it gets overwritten with the oldest file. Report server cache path or RPG. It is one of the important property for you to understand this RPG folder and when it comes to picture. Everybody has learned about the published report. In case of published report, the report is published and can be viewed in a later instance. Okay. So that from where application is getting that later instance of the report for future viewing. It is stored in a proprietary format in the RPG folder of the application, that is report cache path. By default, it is in report server, but you can change as per your requirement. This folder, in most of the customer environments, this folder occupies more of the space when you are publishing the report mostly. So this folder will occupy a large amount of space. For that reason, we have also provided a secondary RPG location as well. So in case there is no space available in primary RPG, a secondary RPG location on some or other disk can also be defined. File source, by default, file source like files for file source connection, which is your CSV, Excel, text, is available under file source folder, but you can change as per your requirements. Archive directory, for archiving any report of the application or published report of the application, it can be archived in this directory. Data science models are kept in the data science model. Let's move on to the network settings now. Listener IP. You have already gone through the application architecture in which we have discussed in detail. Intellicus is comprises of a data model, which is like two separate components. One is report server and one is web client. Ideally, when you install the application, both are present on a single server. Okay, but there is a possibility that both the applications, report server and web client, can also be present on different machines. And web client, if you know the IP and port, any web client can communicate with the report server. Okay. In case you want to bind the report client IP that should access the report server, then you can define that IP or name over here to provide an extra amount of security that no other application or no other report client can access the report server. When we discuss the web portal or report client properties, we will discuss in detail how report client connects with the report server through TCP IP protocol. Host URL. You have discussed in detail about the while scheduling, we send the report either through as an attachment or as a link that can be used for future. In case sending the report as a link, we have to provide the URL of the application. Okay, that URL is configured in the host URL. Like my URL is localhost 8080 Intelligence, so I can provide it over here. So now anybody who access my application, if instead of localhost, if I provide my IP and send this link as an email to anyone, they can access the report by just clicking on the link. They will be redirected to the report published instance. Compressed data network. So this property says that how you want your data to travel or communicate between the components, whether in compressed or uncompressed form. So we generally kept it by default as compressed. This will have some minimal impact on performance on the secondary. This will increase the data communication speed. And if you keep it disabled, then it won't travel in the compressed form. Drill down max URL length. The hyperlink URL has a character limit up to what length you can define. That is defined over using this property. So by default, it is 2000, but you can increase or decrease as per your requirement. Now, the third function we are going to discuss is the concurrency management. This is very important from administration point of view to understand what is concurrency management. And when you are having a load on the server, these properties plays a very important role to identify why your report is taking time, it is not executing, why it is going in a queue. So all these things are governed through this concurrency management properties. Now let's discuss it one by one in detail about these properties. Execution thread or the exec thread. Whenever you are executing any report, it requests for an execution thread. Means one report will take one thread for execution. So currently, and this is governed through license, currently my license limit is 5. It means that I can execute 5 reports in parallel. If 6 requests come, then it will go in queue. Once any ones of the request finish, then the 6th request will get processed. So this is very important. This thread, exact thread, it comes into picture when a report starts executing, and the number of reports which are executing are governed through these threads, the limitations on number of reports. Second is service thread. Service threads come into picture when application communicates with the repository for getting all the details like login details, schedule details, all the details where application is communicating with the repository is governed through service thread. Cancel thread. Suppose you are running any report, okay? Suddenly you want to stop that. So that part of execution where you are stopping the execution of a report is governed through the cancel thread. Schedule job dispatch thread. The number of schedules that can be executed simultaneously is decided through this thread. It means that only 10 schedules can be executed at a time. If 11th request will come, it will go in queue. Once any one of the schedule is completed, then the next available in the queue on first in first out basis will start executing. Changing this property as per your license or if you want to configure would require a application restart. So other properties as you see for hot deployable, it doesn't require a restart of the application, but yes, scheduler job dispatch thread would. Dashboard thread. Each dashboard thread comprises of one widget, one dashboard widget. Okay. Suppose a dashboard is having 8 widgets and currently the threads is allocated is 4 to me. So what happened is once you access the dashboard, first 4 widgets will be rendered in parallel. Rest all widgets will be go in queue. Once the first 4 execution is completed, then the next one will start getting executed. Similar in case of reports or schedules. But in case of dashboard threads, it is governed at widget level. For each widget, one dashboard thread is consumed. Helper execution thread. These helper execution threads helps the report to execute simultaneously. Collab execution threads. Whenever you are accessing the HSV report, in that case, this OLAP thread come into picture. It means for one complete HSV report, this OLAP thread is taken care. So one report is equal to one thread. If 5 reports, as per my current license, 5 reports can be executed in parallel. Permalink, we have discussed in detail the permalink functionality. of the application in schedules during the schedules discussion. So as per current limit of my license, 5 permalink requests can be served simultaneously. Data caching, cache file compression. It means that during the connection discussion, we have an option of caching the metadata, which is the schema of the database. Do you want to keep that data in compressed format is decided by this problem. Data cache purge time. It means that the cache which is present, it will be deleted after 30 minutes. Cache is generally kept in the RPG folder. Okay. So you can change as per your requirement. All the reports which are executed are kept in cache for this duration. So you should be very wisely setting up this property. This will have a direct impact on the space occupied on your disk where application is installed. Data cache purge frequency. After this frequency defines that this data cache purge time should execute after how much duration. Okay. So this purge frequency currently set to 30. What happens is after every 30 minutes, this purge will get executed. It will check which data cache is more than 30 minutes and it will delete those data. So it is not like that once the report is of 30 minutes, it will get deleted. It may last for total 30 plus 30, 60 or earlier, but at max more than 60, this data cache will be purged. Next property segregation we are going to discuss is memory management. Request queue size, we discussed in concurrency management about queue. This queue value can be defined here. What is the maximum queue size you have to keep? Okay. So currently it's by default, it is set to 1000. You can change as per your requirement. Data source fetch size, rows for fetch. This is very important property for you. As you know, in Intellicus, data communicates between client and server model through data chunks. The size of the chunk is defined by this property. Currently, it is set to 50. It means the data chunk size would be of 50 rows. In case you want to increase this size, so that will faster your application performance, but it will impact the usage of your hardware as it will consume more RAM because more rows will be kept in memory. So we have to keep a balance between our as performance requirement and hardware usage to configure this property, which is data source fetch size. Schedule job dispatch queue size. Similar to report execution, the number of reports, scheduled reports that can be kept in queue apart from whatever they are scheduled is governed through this property, schedule job dispatch queue size. You can increase or decrease this property based on your requirement. I'm not going to discuss all the properties over here because there are large number of properties in the application and it would be even difficult for you to remember all these properties. But we will discuss more common or more used properties that might come useful for you. Repeat report execution request. In case user has repeatedly performing any report execution request with same parameters by mistake or intentionally, how you want to treat that request. Should it prompt for cancel? Should it allow all? Or should it deny a new one? So based on this property, it can be defined. Field lookup max value. The field lookup max value is the maximum lookup values, number of values which can be used in a query object while using it in filter stage of the application. This property reduces the load of query object time while loading when we are executing the report. Let's come in to discuss compliance in detail now, starting with audit log. So audit log is an application functionality where you want to have details of all the users, what all details or what all reports they have executed. So you want to get all the details, what reports, what with what parameter, which user, in which format, at what time is executed. So all these details are captured and kept in audit log. This audit logging consumes your repository space along with your disk space. So you should wisely enable this audit logging and configure its properties. Audit logging purge time, that is by default set to 30, which is in days. It means that the audit logs will be kept for 30 days of the application. This logs will be automatically deleted after 30 days from that. In case you want to increase as per your requirement or business requirement, you want to increase or decrease this days, it can be configured through this property. Audit RPG purge time. This property is very important for you to understand. This property will be directly having load on your repository. This property will have the audit RPG purge time will have direct impact on the disk size. It means that after 7 days, the report output, which is kept in form of RPG files in RPG folder, will be purged. However, the logs will be kept for 30 days in the repository. If you don't want your report output for 7 days, then you can change this property to 1 or 2 days as well. This will help you to decrease the usage of your disk. Statistics. This property is very important and very useful for the new users. If a user want to understand what is the time taken by any report execution and what is the average time of its execution, what is the number of rows, count of rows in that report, all through things you will get by configuring the statistics property. By default, it is disabled, but you can enable it. So it will provide you the run history of the report along with all the details like how much time average does this report takes, what is the number of rows based on the past history. However, the current execution will also have other dependencies like the parameters you are choosing and amount of rows in the report while executing the report. Withhold, purge till archive. So in case you want to hold the purge till archive process has taken place, then you enable this property. Okay. Archiving is done for published reports. Archiving frequency you can set as per your requirement. By default, it is 30 days, but you can change as per your requirement. Published report approval required. When report publishing, you can send that for the approval process. So approval workflows allows you to set an approver that will approve your published output to be viewed by other person. Published report visibility. So you want that at global level or at organization level. The published report output can also be defined by you. Login mode. So there are three types of login mode. One, the login page shows the organization list. Second, login page shows the text box. Third, login page doesn't prompts for organization. So it will check all the individual users and take irrespective to the organization. The basic requirement of this is the username should be unique across all the organizations for the option 3 to be used. Coming on to fault tolerance. Exit on error. Fault tolerance comes into picture whenever you have a fatal error or a critical memory fault in which, in case your report engine went down, then whether you want that report engine to restart automatically and allocate a fresh memory. This is very helpful in terms of when you are having a production environment. So you can enable this property. So whenever you have a critical memory breakage due to huge amount of usage, report server will restart itself and allocate a fresh memory. So all your future requests will be processed in a normal order. Memory trigger notification. As you know, we can configure the memory that report server can use in the application. As per that totally depends on the server available hardware and your usage. You can increase or decrease this memory trigger, this trigger notification based on the memory trigger level. So once your memory usage reaches this trigger level, which is currently set to 90%, a notification will be sent to your email address that memory trigger has reached to a alarming level. Go and check your server which report is consuming. Either increase the memory or kill any non-used report. So this is a kind of performance indicator which informs you that your memory has reached to a certain level. Increasing further might result into non-catering of the request, new request of report execution. Execution rejection on memory trigger. Let's say your memory has reached 90%. So whether you want your reports to still get executed or not, that can be defined by this property. So if we enable this property, once we reach the trigger level, the new request will be rejected. Retrigger level of the memory is set to 70%. Default memory usage per execution is 50 MB in size. You can increase or decrease based on the requirement. Time difference between each trigger. The memory trigger notification is set to 30 minutes by default. Let's say your memories keep on fluctuating between 80, 90, 80, 90. So you will get notification only after 30 minutes once the first notification is sent. This is to have that your system shouldn't have large number of junk emails. You can change this timing based on your requirement. Let's discuss the next section, which is rendering. Hmm. So, coming back from rendering to schedules and emails. Email from address. Whenever you are scheduling any report, your users are receiving an email. The from address from which all those emails will be sent on schedule is defined from this. Let's say if you want to define some other, you can define it over here. support@intellicus.com. So all user who would be sending emails through scheduled reports will receive email from support@intellicus.com. Okay. Job success mail to. If you are an admin, you want all your designers or your support team to know which jobs are successful, they should get a success email for all your jobs. So which can be configured over here. So multiple email IDs can be configured, divided, separated by semicolon. Similar way, job error email. You can send the job error email, whatever jobs have failed, to a certain person to look into it if a job has failed. Job success mail subject. So you can define the subject of the email as well, which you sent when a job is successful. Similarly, the failure subject as well. It should be defined when you are sending a failure. SMTP server. You have to provide SMTP details of your organization for configuring the mail server for sending the mails through the application. So we provide an option of second SMTP primary server configuration and secondary SMTP configuration. In case primary server doesn't work, there is an option for secondary which can be configured as a fail-safe mechanism in application. Schedule job purge history site. Currently, it is set to 7 days by default. It means that the job history of all the schedules will be kept for 7 days. After 7 days, the schedule execution history would be deleted automatically. Scheduler enabled. If you want all your schedules or user to schedule and execute the job, you have to enable this. If you disable this property, even if your user has scheduled any job, it will be failed and never get executed. Another important property or section of property for you to understand is timeouts. Database connection time. It is the maximum amount of time over which the query will be, which you have written in your query object, will be executed in database. If the query is taking more than this time, then report execution will fail with an error saying that your query is taking more time for execution than what it is configured in the application. So this is a single point of failure which you might observe with your long running queries. So as per suggestion, it is always recommended to keep the high value of database connection timeout to avoid failure of your long running reports. Client session timeout. It is the maximum time for which server will wait to receive a response from client. This is defined in seconds. Currently, by default, it is set to 600 seconds. If client is not sending response to server within this time, then the server will close the user session. Remote session time. It is the maximum duration after which the report session will be closed. The remote session will be closed. It is available in case of callback or remote data source drivers. Cache purge frequency. It is the maximum time in minutes for which the cache should be retained. The published reports. So after this time, the published report will be deleted automatically, which is kept in the RPG. Published report expiry time. Published report expiry time is defined the time which is global. Let's say while publishing the report in a schedule, you have given a time of 1 year. Okay. But at organization level, you have a policy that you can keep the report up to 30 days or 1 month. So if your super admin has defined any property of 30 minutes, then 30 days, then even if you have configured 1 year, your report will be published instance of your report won't be available after 30 minutes, 30 days. Locale, you can define Intellica supports more than 36 locales. So you currently it is showing English only because I have a license limitation of English, but you can define locale as per your requirement and set. Similarly, time zone. So you can set the time zone as per your requirement of the application and set it on. SQL aggregation. If you want query which is getting fired from query object on database to be get aggregated or to be fired as it is. So aggregated means we have applied group by conditions and all during report execution. So based on your requirement, this will enable or disable the SQL aggregation. This is all about the report server properties which we discussed in detail today. Now let's move ahead with the web portal or report client properties, the second topic of today's session. I know report server properties are very vast. I have covered only half of the properties. So as and when used, some people might use this very often. Some once configured, maybe later on for years, it won't be required. So that totally depends on your requirement. Let's start with the web portal. So as we discussed in detail in the earlier part of this session, that report server and web portal communicate with each other through TCP/IP protocol. There is a possibility that report server and web portal can be placed on different servers. So in order to communicate both, we define the IP and port of report server in the web portal properties. So if instead of this, if I define the IP over here on which report server is available, which can be configured. Let's test the connection. So if report server is accessible, it will test and test will be succeeded. Third is report server timeout properties. The time after which the reports the request will be sent to client. Okay, if report server doesn't send request to this much time, then the request will be automatically cancelled and session will be closed. HTML viewer time after which the request was made to web client must be avoided when there is no active communication from the browser. Report server chunk timeout. When after this duration, when there is no response from report server, then report server is either down or not accessible. Hence, this property will abort the session. Login, if you want that client to be logging, you can enable or disable that as well. Different types. Similar to report server, we have logs at client test. This is the web portal. Same, we have 5 types of logging: debug, info, warning, error, and fatal. Based on your requirement, you can define these log levels. These logs can be directly downloaded from the portal for the end users, and the file name is report client logs.log. In case you want to physically download the logs, then you have to go to the place where application is installed. Jakarta, web apps, Intellicus, client, logs. Under this location, physically from the server, the log files can be accessed for the report client or the web portal. Similar, the logging would be based on your requirement. You can have debug, info, warning, fatal, or error as per your requirement and the server usage. Now let's discuss about the another important. We have multiple properties, like viewer has its own properties. Ad hoc wizard will have its own properties. Portal menu, you can configure the portal menu. Portal menu is what options you are seeing over here. It can be also configured over here. If you want a particular option should be not available or not in you can delete that as well from here. Plus, it is also SaaS based model is available. If you change some settings and click on save as, so that based on our SaaS based model, it will be available or visible to only few users. So you can select the users to which you want to show those options, but will be only visible to those. Printer settings, license. The license which you can deploy for your application is through this option. Just browse and deploy the license if you have a new license. If you want to see the tagging of your license, it can be directly viewable here. What is the validity, what start date, what is the version, number of users. All the limitations of your application is governed through license. For generating any kind of license, you need to generate a file called report server or report client problem. Report server license.req file. So for sending the report, you have to send this file to us along with your license for getting a new license. Config files. So based on different components of report server and web portal, we have the config files available in the application. Let's start with report server and discuss the config files in detail. Ad hoc template file. So the ad hoc report or the ad hoc report wizard, there are multiple templates if you have access to it. So these templates can be configured, these IRL can be configured or added and modified using this. So you can modify as per your requirement from this, save the changes and change. The IRL file of these templates can be modified from here. Similarly, the chart template files, let's say your pie chart, you want to modify your pie chart. So you have to go to mchart JavaScript, the default, and let's say I go to the pie chart ICT file, I click on edit. Whatever changes I want to do in my pie chart settings, I can do those settings, save the changes and just refresh the cache. So all those config files are available physically on the server, but from portal itself for the user perspective, it can be also accessed and modified from this path. Connection files, data mapping files are there. Important file for you to understand is local info, mail template files. Let's discuss them in detail. So we have discussed during scheduler and email that you will be receiving a success email or a failure email. Okay. Now you have a question that what message exactly, from where, what we want to send in that email, from where it can be configured. So it can be configured through these text file, which are config files, which are available under mail message template files. So go to job success message, edit. Here you will see what is the subject, what is the message, and who has to send. Let's say if you want to change, make it Intellicus support, you want to change the job details, and whatever you want, you can do that, save and close. So your jobs will be saved. In this way, all the default messages can be configured based on your requirement that are sent through email. Report server config file. This is one of the important files for you to understand is the report engine.property files. All these property files we discussed in the server are kept in these report server report engine properties. Currently, you will see only 3 to 4 properties here because this file contains only the change properties. The default file or the default properties are kept in report engine default.properties file, which is present at this location. If you want to check it, report engine config, this is the, in this file, you will get all the details or all the properties which we discussed in detail. If you want to manually configure this file, if you don't have access to the server, then it can be configured through this file and this path by editing this file. Mobile devices. The mobile devices or its policy can be configured from this path. Notification channel can be set from here. Let's discuss the last topic of today's session, which is iPackager, which is very important topic for you when it comes to picture, when you want to move the artifacts or the application which you have developed from this server and want to move it to some other server. Let's say this is your development server. You have developed all the artifacts in this folder. Now you want to move these to your some other server. So these can be moved through an IntelliCus utility, inbuilt utility or application function, which is called as iPackager, IntelliCus packager. This iPackager can be accessed from navigation, repository, and iPackager. iPackager consists of three sections: entity type, selected entities, and selection summary. These entity types are further divided into three sections: user management, repository, and configuration. User management section consists of the users, organizations, its roles, users, and its private object. All details related to the user. Repository consists of all the IntelliCus architectures or the artifacts like reports, query objects, parameter objects, analytical object, dashboard, schedules. So everything relate which artifacts which are developed by you are present in the repository section. Third is configuration. All the configuration details which we discussed, like report server properties, web client properties, config files. Earlier we discussed about connection, data science, license, templates are available in connection, are available in configurations which you can use or bundle as per your requirement. Let's discuss in detail. So in user management, you can select the user which you want to bundle. Let's say I have an admin user. So I have bundled the admin user along with its private object and preferences. Now I went to the repository, reports, and I selected few reports. Okay. Now there is two options. One is that I have selected two reports. Now I have to select its dependent object like query object, parameter object, or an analytical object in case of HSV. To know each name, go and search it over here, which is very cumbersome, right? So to avoid that, we provide an option of include dependency. So you have to do nothing. Go and select the report, do check this include dependency checkbox option. Now application will do its job. So if you go to selection summary, you will see here I have selected one user, one category, one organization, and two reports. But when I click on view selected objects, it will show me that depending on those two reports, it has automatically selected these two query objects. Even I have not selected that. It comes into picture when I have used this include dependency option. Similar way, I can choose the dashboard as well. I want, let's say, let me choose one dashboard of cost floating. Click on it and let me choose the few connection as well. Let me choose that demo report. So whatever artifacts I want, I can choose the artifacts or the configuration users. Then click on save. Okay. This save means it will create a configuration file of these selected objects. Okay. Training.conf. It means that next time you don't have to select all these things. You just load this configuration file and automatically these options will be checked. So go and click on open. So you can, if you have multiple conf file, you can select whatever you want. It will be open. Okay. There is one more option for you to understand: prompt before deployment if entity exists. Let's say your report, this report which we have selected, is already present on your target. Okay. You might have a requirement that you want to overwrite it or you don't want to overwrite. So checking this option will prompt you when you are deploying your report that whether you want to deploy that report or not. In case you don't want to deploy that report, you can click on no or you can click on yes. So once you have selected these options, selected the artifacts, you can click on build cap. So let's say I give it as a name as a training, author as Vivek, company as Intellicus, version as 1.0. This is cap file for training. And click on build and download. So these files will, this training will be, cap file is downloaded. Now, once this file is downloaded, what you can do is click on deployer for deploying this file. Currently, we have created an iPackager in the form of cap file, which is having bundled all the artifacts which we have designed. Click on deployer, browse, desktop, webinar, training cap. Click on upload. Now it is showing me what all artifacts are present in this and what is its current color. So every color had its own indication. Artifact will not be updated or artifact will be updated. Red color means object is already present. Object will same ID present. It will provide all the details. Okay. If you click on deploy, since I have clicked on prompt option, it is asking me what action I have to perform. Whether I have to replace this, means overwrite, delete, or escape. So if you want to delete the existing with demo report DB connection, you can delete that. If skip, let's say I do that. So it will skip. Let's say I want to replace one. I want to delete this dashboard. So it will delete. So whatever you want, you can apply as per you. Right. So automatically these options will take place after iPackager or cap deployment, and you will get a summary of that, which you can download in form of log files and view it later on. So this is it all regarding the deployment of creation of cap file and deployment of cap. I'm done with my today's session. Please share all your question answers regarding today's session. Thank you. That's all for today's session. In case you have any questions, you can reach out to us further through email at support@intellicus.com. Thank you.